Brad, you say that Microsoft successfully executed a court order to basically take over control of 6 domains you say are associated with this group called Strontium or Fancy Bear that's widely associated with the Russian government. How certain are you that this is Russia?
Well, Emily, we're very confident that these 6 domains were set up and were put together to be used to harvest email credentials or passwords by this group, Strontium. It is the 84th time since 2016. This is the 12th order that we have obtained to go address the activities of this group, which we believe, understand very well. And what we're seeing now is a pattern that in many respects is similar to what we saw in the United States in 2016 when certain campaigns and political parties were attacked. It is similar to the pattern that we saw in France in 2017 when we really saw every major candidate for the French presidency targeted. We're seeing it again.
Now, you got to these particular websites early, and there's no evidence that they were actually used to propagate any sort of attacks. But if they had been successful, how do you think they would have contributed or could have contributed to threats against democracy as you describe it?
Well, you're right. We were able to act quickly enough that we don't believe there were any successful attacks in this instance. But what people attempt to do in this kind of situation is set up an internet domain, create a website, use a name that looks very similar to the name that people would expect to see. It has 3 of them had the word Senate in it. One had the letters IRI. That's the acronym for the International Republican Institute. Employees or board members or members of the Senate might then start to receive emails. They would be told that there's a problem, for example, with their account, that they need to go to this website. They would go to that site. It would look like the Senate site or the IRI site. They would be asked to enter in their email name and password. Once that happens, then it's off to the races, unfortunately, for these kinds of attacks, because then the attackers will attempt to use that to access people's email, to download all their email, to access the broader networks on which sensitive documents might be stored.
One of the websites, the domain name was Senate.group, for example. Now, did any of this activity start, or has any of the activity that you've seen started or ramped up after that summit in Helsinki between President Trump and President Putin?
I don't think that we can connect this to any specific event like the summit in Helsinki or anything like that. I think we can see it as more generalized as taking place in 2018 as we approach the midterm elections. And I think it's also significant in this instance, as we've said, that this is a focus not just on, say, Democrats, but the IRI, the International Republican Institute, the Hudson Institute, more on the conservative side of the political spectrum. We're seeing a broadening to address these kinds of think tanks and both political parties, which is exactly what we saw in France last year.
Now, you're also announcing that you are expanding Microsoft's Defending Democracy program. You're providing cybersecurity to federal, state, and local candidates, campaigns, think tanks, political organizations. Why is Microsoft so active in this arena compared to other tech companies?
Well, I actually think that there are a number of tech companies doing more. At Microsoft, we recognize first, we're in the business of ensuring the cybersecurity of our customers. Many of these candidates and campaigns and political parties and think tanks are our customers. We want to provide with this new Account Guard initiative state-of-the-art cybersecurity protection at no extra cost so that they're really on a par with our most sophisticated enterprise customers. And we want to do this both because these are our customers and because I think we all have a responsibility to do more. I think this is a moment in time when we should reflect as a nation and really across democratic societies around the world that 21st century democracy will flourish only if we take new steps to protect it. And these steps cannot be confined to one political party or to people in government. We need to come together in the tech sector, across the tech sector, and in partnership with democratic governments around the world.
Brad, we're getting headlines from the Russian Foreign Ministry that says Microsoft involved in quote unquote witch hunt. What's your reaction to that?
I have no doubt that we are on solid ground. We have firm information. We have the facts, we know what we are doing, and we know exactly where this points, and there are no witches at the end of this hunt.
That said, the president himself has continued to waver in terms of whether Russia was behind election meddling at all. You know, what are your words to President Trump himself about the origination of these attacks?
Well, as I said, there is no doubt that these 6 websites were associated with the Strontium or Fancy Bear group that is widely connected with the government of Russia. But this has now been validated by the head of the FBI, the head of the Department of Homeland Security. We're not alone in this conclusion. Well, we live in a world where there's lots of different things going on. There's cybersecurity threats from different countries at different times. This threat, there is no doubt in our mind about where it came from.